Hello, hello, from the place that football apparently, allegedly, ostensibly, possibly is coming home to. We will, of course, be talking football, and since this podcast is being recorded before, but published after the final of Euro 2020-2021, some of our comments may sound a bit pointless and outdated by the time you listen to this, such as the nature of fast-paced news and opinion production in today's podcast world. We'll have to take the risk. You're listening to episode 48 of the Small Data Forum, as always with Neville Hobson, experienced podcaster, social media strategist, and declared non-football fan. Good morning, Neville.
Morning, Thomas and Sam.
And Sam Knowles, book author, keynote speaker, and managing director of brand storytelling consultancy Inside Agents. Plus, as of this week, multiply decorated industry maven. Good morning, Sam, and go on then, tell us more.
Oh, good morning. Well, good morning, Thomas. Good morning, Neville. Very briefly, well, actually, it's much more exciting than winning 4 awards when you only enter 3 at the Communicate magazine's Internal Communications and Engagement Awards. Much more exciting, and including the best use of data. Much more exciting than that was actually going to an awards dinner in a hotel in Covent Garden on socially distanced tables that happened to coincide with the England versus Denmark semi-final. I have to say the organisers, full credit to them. The organisers organised the entire thing all around the game. So there were 4 awards before kickoff. We had the first half, 10 at half time, and we had to wait for the last few awards until after the hotly disputed but absolutely bang-on Sterling penalty. So it was very good. And if anybody is remotely interested, I'm sure, Thomas, in the show notes, we can include a link to a blog to what it's like to go back to be in a real life event. Gosh, 3 dimensions are so much better than 2. But thank you and good morning, both.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Sam. Congratulations. And it was a dive. I'm sorry, it was a dive. So, episode 48, we're edging closer to our golden jubilee. And I don't think either of us would have foreseen that in June 2016, when we got going with our little podcast. 5 long years. It does seem like last week, time flying and all of that. So
6 years, actually, Sam. Thomas?
6 years?
Yeah.
16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 26 years. God, yeah. Yes.
26 years?
Yeah.
4 years.
So 55 years. So
Of hurt.
Sam has his new awards. I'm a newly published co-guest editor of an academic journal all about the future of PR. Hey! Now, Neville, what latest achievement do you have to throw into the mix?
14 kilos.
Okay. That sounds
loss.
Intriguing.
Weight loss in 2 months, 14 kilos. I've been on this weight program called Noom, N-O-O-M, which is more behavior change. So I'm not going to get into, is it a diet program or what? It's a behavioral change program, but it's also about diet. So I've been following this program for the last 2.5 months. I've got 2.5 more months to go on the target I set. So I started out at 112 kilos. That's a lot. According to the NHS, that's into the obesity area for someone my height. And I've lost 14, which is in our money, I think it's like 3 stones and something, I can't remember, 200 and something pounds. I can't remember, I think of it in kilos. And I continue this till October when I hit my target of 90 or maybe 85 at a stretch. And I'm pretty much on track to that. So today I weigh 97 kilos, which is great. I passed the 100 milestone towards the end of June. I was thrilled. I can get into clothes that I haven't been able to wear for ages. Clothes I've recently bought, particularly a set of shirts I bought just before Christmas last year, do not fit me anymore. They're too big. Good example. This is done up at the collar and it's still too big. But I'm thrilled, actually, and I don't talk about it too much. I've been sharing updates with my friends on Facebook. It's generated quite a bit of response, particularly in private messages from people. It clearly resonates, this kind of thing about how do you do this? Is it painful? No. Is it something you've got to really pay attention to? Undoubtedly, without question, but you need the right mindset. Anyway, I'll have an update with more detail about Noom in particular in a blog post on my blog in a couple of weeks.
That's fabulous. So I'm definitely going to link to that in the show notes, and then we'll pick up again on it once there's more to say. That's
good work.
Okay.
Good work, Neville.
Thank you.
Bravo. Really impressive. it has just conjured up a really weird image in my head of our prime minister, who we will not name by first name.
Now he needs one of these.
Who on the one hand is fairly obese, and on the other hand is still wearing suits that look like he's been twice the size before. I mean, just imagine what he would look like if he lost. Anyway,
I saw. Do you remember? I'm sorry to hijack before we get on, but do you remember at the beginning of the pandemic when our prime minister shook hands with everyone and then mysteriously contracted COVID and then was at death's door by all reports? And he came out afterwards and said and launched a big campaign that said that we were going to all have to lose weight and get fit. If anything, I think he's straining more at his trousers than he was at that point.
Definitely.
I read in passing. Or skim read a profile of his personal trainer. I mean, it wasn't really a terribly good advertisement. This man apparently is personal trainer to the stars, but in Johnson he has one recalcitrant, very much in need of your scheme. I think, Neville, very much in need.
Yeah, I mean, this is about behavior change more than anything, and it's interesting what you said there, Sam. About I remember that the call to people to lose weight.
Yeah.
I think it's an issue, and if we could go down the rabbit hole of talking about weight of people generally in society, obesity, and health risks of all of that. But it is a big issue. I've been very conscious of it, obviously, because I'm in this program. But you need to start, and a tool like Noom, for me, certainly, was the best guide to doing this. It's behavior change more than anything, and that's the key thing.
How much are they paying you as a lead influencer?
To give me full marks when I pass and get my certificate hang on the wall. But it's something I believe in, and that's the key thing. You have to believe you will succeed. I mean, it sounds corny, but like so many things in life, you have to believe it'll work. I remember when I gave up smoking now 15 years ago, I literally woke up one day and said, I got to stop today. And I stopped. No patches, no nothing. I never had side effects because I believed I would do it. And the same with this. And that's what's kept me going. That's what drives me, as it were. Not the same for everyone. I know others who are religious almost about the calorie counts, following a specific diet, and they don't deviate. That's not what Noom's about.
Yep.
You can eat what you want. I'm drinking wine every day with dinner still, and it doesn't have any impact whatsoever on my weight at the scale that I'm doing it at and the speed with which I'm reducing it. So I'm pretty good about it. So I'm pretty comfortable with the diet change. It's massive, my diet change, by the way, from the shift from red meat to other stuff. Not radical like a vegan or one of those activists, as it were, but it's certainly a big change. Anyway, I'll stop now, otherwise the whole show will be about this. Sorry. But anyway, it's worth doing, in my opinion, if you're concerned about your weight, something like this.
If only our listeners could see your background, the white oval of Wembley, and think about your grid and focus, and then translate that to the Three Lions on Sunday night.
Remember, we record this and we get it up on the YouTube channel, so anyone can visit the YouTube channel and see that.
And on that note, no, okay. So health and behavior change.
Yeah.
Let me very gently, not abruptly at all, pivot to COVID and vaccination, and a wonderful story that was published on Tortoise Media, the lovely, lovely, brilliant Tortoise Media that I need to start giving money to, because I adore them and they deserve some money.
Well,
anyway.
a quick footnote. I was not mugged, but I was when it started 2 years and a bit ago. I subscribed for 3 years, and I immediately had buyer's remorse and thought, oh no, what have I done this for? Because I'm not going to use this at all. But it is the one email when it comes in the morning that I read, and I'm really, really, really pleased. And also, it was a bargain, 250 quid for the first 3 years.
Fair enough.
That helped to pump right it. And I think they're making a real mark. Anyway, go back to the story.
Yeah, I love their long form journalism.
Yeah, it's great.
It's just
the
beautiful.
The podcasts are excellent.
Yeah.
Other podcasts are available.
Tortoise Media vaccinating America. So Sam, that's one that you throw into the mix.
Yeah,
so tell us more.
It was very interesting. So they published a correlational chart, and it's a fairly weak correlation. I don't think they even dared publish the correlation coefficient. But what they said was, by any stretch of, particularly let's say compared with Australia, that's another issue. But by any stretch of the vaccine impact imagination, America hasn't done badly. Biden set his 100 million target for his first 100 days. He got to 200. 58% of American adults are fully vaccinated. Not bad, not bad. But it seems that they've reached a ceiling. It seems that they are going to struggle to get to the 70 to 90% that epidemiologists estimate we need for proper, and we won't mention Cummings, or Hancock, but we won't mention their herd immunity strategy by everyone contracting. But for herd immunity via vaccination, the sort of thing that you get via the MMR vaccine, for example, in children against measles, mumps, and rubella. I think the figures there are about 84, 85%. Once it got below that, then there started to be pockets of outbreak. Anyway, it looks like America is going to struggle to get there. And there's a massive, as we know, conspiracy theory, anti-vaxxer lobby, partly organized and vocalized by worried moms, particularly through social media, but also by Trump supporters. So the correlation that is shown in this tortoise piece shows that in areas where that voted to re-elect Trump, and there were, you know, a decent number of those, Biden did not win by the predicted landslide, as we've talked about this before, by about 4 or 5%. But in those, the stronger the nature of this correlation, the stronger the Trump support in districts across America, the lower the levels of vaccination. Now, some people might sort of think this is a classic Darwin Awards, you know. Long may those that voted for the big orange Cheeto continue to protest, because gradually they'll be weeded out one by COVID. I'm joking, of course, but what is interesting is that America may well not get to the required levels of vaccination to deliver herd immunity because of it's about Bill Gates injecting us with microchips. It's all a conspiracy. There's no pandemic. But what is interesting, talking to friends and collaborators in America, is that much of the country is entirely back to normal. All mask signs are taken down. No one's wearing masks anywhere at all. And yet the pandemic is manifestly, maybe particularly in Trump-supporting areas, not over. So I think it's a paradox. You know, well done, Biden, finally having a health strategy. You know, as I think we agree, no COVID, we still have Trump as president, right? I think it's not a unifactorial thing, but I think the pathological mishandling by Trump of the pandemic led to him not getting re-elected, because the economy was looking good in the paradoxical way the American economy does. So I just think, you know, really interesting that politics may prevent a successful return to a semblance of normality in some parts of the states because of political opinion related to conspiracy theory.
Is there Neville, to you, do you think there's a perspective that something similar may play out in the UK at some point?
Don't see why not, but on a smaller scale. But it's hard to predict that. I'm actually thinking of a story in The Economist that came out the other day. Headline: "The unvaccinated are at risk as evolution accelerates the COVID-19 pandemic." And this is actually quite interesting, because it's talking, your point, Sam, or in that tortoise article is interesting. But they're saying effectively that the rush to give people a first shot and leave behind those who refuse is effectively what we're seeing. And it's now with the variants that are spreading like wildfire, and that I don't think anyone would argue that that's not the case, looking at the number of new cases that are accelerating at a rapid pace, is alarming. And I see others talking about, well, actually, you know what, it doesn't really matter because the deaths aren't keeping pace. Well, that's the picture now, but many of those folks are going to go to hospital. So that's in the thing too. And I hear similar to what you said, Sam, people I know in America talking about exactly that. Signs are going, people aren't wearing masks. Many people I talk to, I won't say most, but it could be most, are still wearing their masks, as we are, for instance. When the changes happen here in the UK, I'm not going to suddenly not wear my mask when I go to a store or a supermarket. I shall wear the mask. I suspect many of those stores will insist anyway that you wear a mask. So be prepared for kerfuffles at the door when people refuse and say, you can't stop me entering your store. You're going to see some of that happening, I think. So we're probably going to be in a time of great risk of social unrest because of not everyone agrees with the changes. And just look at the mainstream media every day. There's no agreement whatsoever on what it all means. There's all these different things. It's a risk. It's not a risk. Yes, it is a risk. What about the unvaccinated? A story yesterday in New Zealand, children are getting sick big time as collateral damage, if you will, because they've not been exposed to other diseases to gain immunity, and suddenly they're getting sick with all those other diseases, and the hospital's filling up.
So there's something
Not good.
There's something going on that we don't usually talk about, and my observation is based on a sample of one, and this is a very personal story, so I don't really want to go into too much detail. But in the US, it's not just a Trump story, and it's not just a Trump supporting story, because I have one example of a family member who's an extreme never Trumper in many ways, and now veering into conspiracy theory land based on information that's coming from a scientific angle, based on information that's coming from a basically trained geneticist, and it's all built up into this. I will never get vaccinated. We're all being brainwashed. This is all, and I'm heartbroken to hear that stuff, because I know the background of that person obviously extremely well, and I can't talk to that person anymore sensibly on that topic. It's completely cut off.
If you read any of the wonderful dystopian novels that I read of post-apocalyptic America, this is a theme that features in many of them, about a virus that decimates the population. Well, it's more than decimates, it almost eradicates. But one of the themes in one of the series I'm reading is about the split in society. You have safeguarded cities that have physical barriers, but highly tech. And then you have the wastelands where the folks who didn't get vaccinated live, and they're ignored by society. And I thought that is, to my mind, and of course I'm influenced by these kinds of stories because I think they're great to read, is highly plausible outcome in an extreme case. And America is probably the most likely place where it would happen.
Three things to pick up on there on that interchange. One, a vision of partly what that might be like. Although that's not the theme of it, I strongly recommend, if you haven't watched it, watch Frances McDormand's third Oscar-winning film, Nomadland. Nomadland, which is not it's not about that, but it's about people post the economic crash in particular, who live a nomadic life in RVs around the States. So that may give some clue. Second, I don't feel as pessimistic as you do about Thomas. You know what that tortoise piece talked about in America happening here, because our old friends at Real Chemistry, the agency formerly known as W2O Group, have done some really interesting tracking on vaccine tolerance and acceptance cross-culturally. And we can share a link to that. And the UK is by far and away the highest vaccine acceptance and tolerance and seeking culture. And these are big representative samples. France is the least. UK is between 78 and 82% regularly and repeated. This is before vaccine was available, when it was available, after it's been available, well into the rollout. Now we're up to we're up to what, 80% of first vaccination, 65 of second, and over 18s. So I don't share that pessimistic view. I also don't share the Chris Whitty, Patrick Vallance perspective that just because we haven't seen the increase in hospital doesn't mean we're not going to. Without doubt, hospital admissions and deaths lag, but there's been enough time now of this Delta spread for those to be coming through, and we're still at 10, 20, 30 deaths and 30,000 positive tests. So I think what we talked about before about needing to learn to live with is the strategy that's being pursued. And so I don't think that we're going to get a crippled health service. Well, I think we might get a crippled health service because of government mismanagement and underfunding and the inability of those leading to lead. But I don't think that the little virus is going to be the cause of that.
I think what you're saying there, Sam, makes sense. I would add that I think we will see an overwhelmed health service for the reasons you mentioned, as well as people going down with all these other illnesses that are being.
But our immune system, but I mean, our immune system. So the New Zealand story is interesting, but our immune systems did not collapse because of 18 months of not having a challenge to them.
I totally agree with that. But there's too many outliers, I suppose you could say, kind of influencing the overall picture. And then you add a situation, exactly as you said, an underfunded health service that's creaking at the seams anyway. And you're saying, I don't know what it's like where you live, but where we live here in West Berkshire, we're hearing stories about hospitals declaring, what's this, Black Emergency Day, where they have no beds at all for anything. In A&E or in the hospital, they cannot admit anyone. And the Royal Berkshire Hospital in Reading, one of the biggest hospitals in the southeast of England, was completely full not through COVID, through other things. That
it is absolutely not because of COVID.
Well, exactly, that's my point. It's the overwhelming.
Absolutely not because of COVID, because the COVID inpatient numbers are changing pretty little. They're at about 2,000, and one of the reasons that they're having black emergencies is that the health service is getting back to treating people for other conditions that they've been unable to treat.
Well, that's what I said.
For 18 months.
Where they're literally they're just literally at the bottom of a massive backlog. So
they
are, but that to me does not.
There's 5 million people in the queue.
That I know that. I'm not defending the.
No, I know you're not
defending the policy, but that to me does not say the thing is about to fall over.
Oh, it does to me.
It doesn't say that to me. I was talking last night to the finance director of a big NHS trust, to somebody who runs mental health services in the NHS trust, and to a consultant who works in a local NHS trust. We were licking our wounds after having been rather badly beaten at old man's cricket. And the picture that you're painting. And this is a central. One of them works in central London. 2 of them work in the southeast. The picture that you paint of a system that is on the verge of collapse is not a picture that senior management that I was talking to last night would recommend.
So I think, I with my tiny little media scholar hat on, I would say there's an element there of news production and news consumption.
Absolutely.
And proximity, because what we read in the papers is the stuff that happens around us, and then that gets embellished and
that's one of the issues. I mean, people are talking to local press in particular, gets picked up by the mainstream media. That's a very bleak picture. So a nurse on ward so-and-so, or a hospital orderly here, an ambulance driver, a paramedic, those are the ones who are saying it's about to collapse. So it's hard to know who to believe.
But if you look, then you go from there to the more global perspective, and I very briefly want to touch on this fascinating phrase, vaccine diplomacy, which I find really intriguing, where China, Russia, and India played a really big role. Which is there's an element of sort of geopolitical cynicism in all of that. And I guess in China's case, you could call it the Belt, Road, and Jab initiative. But because everything is sort of, populist media-driven politics these days, then the whole COVID thing has become fair game for propaganda. We see the same thing in the UK, but India is really fascinating in that sense. So you get Narendra Modi wrestling down the COVID villain in the same way as Boris Johnson did, with metaphors and bluster and all of that. And beating COVID gets presented as a case of Hindu dominance, supremacy, if you want.
Let me add a perspective to that, Thomas. My wife's family is from Costa Rica. We have a lot of family over in Costa Rica, and there's a country in Latin America that's actually doing pretty well. The best in Central America, certainly attacking this. They have a program, but the rollout is complex for a country like that. They don't have all the resources. The Americans are helping. They've got the Moderna vaccine. They did have, I think I'm right, the Sputnik at one point from China. Discovered it didn't really work too well. But what's actually happening, and this is one of the difficulties, and I hear this in other countries too, people I know live in those countries, you've got and this is probably typical of Latin America history, if you can afford it, you take a flight to the US and get jabbed there. And there's travel agents offering packages to do precisely that. And I know a number of people who have done that. They've got on a plane, they got a visa, they're entered. When people at Miami or Orlando ask them why they're there, they say, well, I'm here to get my COVID jab. They just stamp the parcel, say, great, and off they go. They go and get the jab, stay in a hotel for a day or two, and then fly back home again. And many, many people are doing that. That's not how it should work at all. And so countries, for whatever reason, some deliberately, most not, Costa Rica certainly not, is a resourcing issue. And that's, to me, brings home very, very clearly the heart of the issue. of how countries like that need help.
So that's at the core of this India story, and I
Right.
obviously can't go into detail or anything. But so what's been happening in India for the last few months is so you get the prime minister, he goes and promises millions of vaccine doses to the world.
Yeah.
From world-beating Indian medical and pharma research institutions, which they have, to suffering countries in the developing world. So it helps India present themselves as one of the world-leading nations. But then it turns out that the wrestling down of the COVID villain hasn't actually worked out so well, and all the promises, in some cases there were contracts also, are being reneged on, because now it's all of a sudden it's all India first. And it's India first in the same way as it's America first, and as it's Britain first, and then it's China first. There's so many firsts, so much firstering happening in all of this, and you think, okay, so this was meant to be a global problem, and this needs global solutions, and it needs sort of infrastructure and collaboration, and we're getting the opposite.
Well, I mean, look what happened in Europe, right? With von Leyden making an absolute fool of herself by taking AZ to court and the rest of it. But you promised to say, well, just because another country. So of course it degenerates to that. One thing I wanted to pick up about on India was one of the reasons. I mean, fortunately. Hancock watched the Matt Damon film in 2011 and massively overordered vaccines. The only good thing that little Matty did that was good, right? But one of the reasons why Delta was so prominent in the UK is because Johnson kept flight paths open with India, and that's a direct Brexit dividend. That was in order to secure the long-term trade deals with India. Only when the folly of allowing thousands of flights from India into the UK actually manifested in the arrival and the rapid spread of this new variant, which we appear to be lucky. The spike proteins don't appear to be unrecognizable to all the vaccines that we have, so we appear to be lucky. But that is a direct Brexit dividend. What a marvelous decision that was.
Can I make a suggestion, because we're running out of time a little bit? We have to talk about football, please.
Yeah, why not?
We have to talk about football. So
it's coming home, Thomas. It's coming home.
So I hear the German embassy in London is greasing up to the awakening English giant now by suggesting in a tweet or something, Es kommt heim, it's coming home. I'm sorry, but this is the Euros, right? So I'm with Kasper Schmeichel-Schmeichelsen on this one, who said, well, it can only come home to where it's been before. And that's not England as a competition. I mean, Denmark, on the other hand, 1992, they did actually win it.
They didn't. Interestingly, I saw there was BBC did a documentary that they didn't qualify. Yugoslavia qualified, but Yugoslavia was having a civil war, so tragically, all of the awful things that happened there. And then Denmark snuck in via the back door. I can't abide the smug Schmeichel, I have to say, but it's mostly because he's a Man United fan. But that's neither here nor there.
I never thought he was a brilliant goalkeeper, but then
his father.
Kasper.
Okay.
He was brilliant in that game against England and before. So fairly impressed with that. But also, what the German embassy piece diplomatically avoided to point out, I do of course not have any such qualms, is to mention exactly how much catching up the hungry Three Lions have to do. I did a little bit of, it wasn't top of my mind, so I had to do a little bit of research on that, but 13 World Cup semifinals, 8 finals, 4 wins, 8 Euro semifinals, 6 finals, 3 wins. So just saying, there's a bit of catching up to do.
Sunday, the 11th of July, which is 2 days from now, and the day before we publish. So we're not going to be making any predictions at all. It's either coming home, or it's Vieni alla casa. It's one of the two. I think we can. It doesn't really matter. But from if you count back the days from this Sunday to the 30th of July 1966, that's 189 days since England played in the final. So I mean, what I think is interesting is statistically, given the wealth, given the fact that the English Premier League, with its variety of overseas players, and of course that marvellous, I hope you'll include a link, that the England team, only 3 of the current England team, had there been no migration, would be, would still be playing. But what I think is interesting, given the Premier League is the richest league in the world, that has more of the best players probably than any other league in the world, thanks to the Sky football deal for the last 19 years for sure. 29 years for sure. But the biggest, most inflated. It's the national sport. It's the 6th richest country in the world. It's given all these things. Statistically, it's extraordinary that England are so far behind.
Biggest underachievers on the planet.
Biggest, without doubt, absolutely without doubt. So this is not regression towards the mean. Even if England go on to win on Sunday, it's not regression towards the mean. It's just a tiny flicker of a needle. It really is. I mean, I think I hadn't thought about it in those terms until I was listening to the Atlantic podcast.
Let's hear our man at Wembley.
Over to you, Des.
Yeah. No, I'd rather be Gary actually.
Yes.
So, and by the way, it's being broadcast.
What, you're a co-minister? Like Gary?
It's actually going to be broadcast live on BBC and ITV on Sunday, both channels. And I know friends in America, many friends are going to be watching it live over there. So it'll be in the middle of the night their time, I would think. Oh no, wait, middle of the morning.
What time is it
kick off?
In California. I mean, it's
exactly.
Very civilized.
Right. So, but the German embassy you mentioned, Thomas, it's actually posted on Facebook. You can access it because it's a globally open post. It doesn't require login. They use the hashtag "Es kommt nach Hause" is what.
Nach Hause, okay.
Yeah, and in fact, they end their message very, very nice, saying, "With Germany out of the competition, we think it's coming home. Es kommt nach Hause."
Der Fußball kommt nach Hause.
It's football diplomacy, I think you dubbed it, Thomas.
We will
precisely
see.
It would be, wouldn't it be? I mean, this is a fatuous and much overstated comment, but it would be ironic, wouldn't it? In the year that the UK leaves the EU, an English (Russian) team wins the Euro, the Champions League, and England wins the Euros. I thought Jack of Kent, the very interesting anti-Brexit lawyer, tweeted after the quarterfinals, England never wanted to leave the European Union. They just wanted to win a football tournament.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So on English nationalism and TV channels, I have one more little topic that I wanted to touch on. And I know this podcast is like 6 weeks after the last one, so it took us a little longer to come back to it. And I seem to remember wasn't there like a new UK TV channel for like angry people? Or no, it wasn't that. It was for people without a voice, right? The underprivileged and the left behind. Or wasn't the main anchor some sort of old wealthy Scottish journalist with the big estate in the south of France, and then he left after a few weeks? It feels like a really long time ago. But Neville, you saw a comment in the Financial Times about this.
Yeah, it was an opinion piece. Jemima Kelly wrote this headline, caught my eye in my feed. The problem with GB News is that it just isn't very good. I thought that's exactly right. I've not watched more than 10 minutes, and maybe that's not enough to form a judgment, but that 10 minutes made me think, what utter bilge this channel is. So if you want news, quote unquote, or let's call it content, served up in the kind of tabloidish, extreme right-wing style that you see in Newsmax in America, for instance, more than Fox News, this is getting close to it. It's truly, truly dire, in my opinion. I echo Jemima's piece. She mentions in her lengthy review, it seems the channel was presenting a straw man. There's no Twitter storm, no social media mob, and no one trying to cancel the school. As I felt my eyes rolling to the back of my skull, it dawned on me, GB News is so tedious, so lacking in nuance, so whiny, and frankly, so low quality, it is actually making me more sympathetic to the cause of those they deem woke. So, and this is from probably a conservative journalist, I would say. But it is extraordinary, don't you think? To me, anyway, when they opened their first night, the first day, I remember reading frothy headlines everywhere saying, "Whoa, they're completely outgunned the traditional channels with the viewers. So amazing, and boy, they're on a roll. That was the first night. People checking in. Do they do it like how many people watch 10 seconds of the video? Do they look at how many people stay longer than 5 minutes? Well, I did 10 minutes. And then I was gone, and I would suspect a lot of that. But it then went downhill from that point.
In their first month, their audience was bigger than BBC News and Sky combined. So I'm not. But just because there are lots of people that want to watch Build doesn't mean that it's going to be good.
Right. Well, that's the whole point.
I think Fox News and the other channel that you mentioned in the States, the content. Well, maybe it's slicker because they've been doing it for longer, and maybe people are angrier and more happy to have actual physical altercations. But maybe that'll be what GB News has to descend to.
Yeah, I think the point is though that the journalist piece, it's not very good, and in which case I hope it fails. Truly, I do.
I'm fairly indifferent to whether or not it fails. I'm perfectly happy for people to have the platform to express their views. But there's a whole don't fund hate thing as well, because there's been the don't fund hate work around the Daily Mail has not stopped the Daily Mail being one of the most successful. And there are lots of brands that have come out and have. God knows why their media agencies even put them onto GB News onto the planning to begin with, but have come out and said we will not be advertising on this. But those that hasn't closed down Facebook, that hasn't closed down the Daily Mail, and they've been big global brands, Unilever, Procter's, they've all pulled out. Yeah. It doesn't stop them. It doesn't stop.
No, but you can't. I don't think the Daily Mail is similar to this at all. It's a wholly different platform. I don't mean print, a newspaper, and it's a newspaper online. This is a TV station online. TV news online. But it's a different thing. They have great celebrity news. That's fantastic. I read it for that. But GB News. It is subjective, Sam. It is subjective.
But my analogy was nothing to do with that. My analogy was to do with the Don't Fund Hate campaigns that have actively been led by major global corporations against the Daily Mail, which I do think is execrable. I don't even get me started.
I must admit
that. No, that's not the. There were Don't Fund Hate campaigns that were run against the Daily Mail, that have been run against Fox News, that have been run against Facebook, and that have been run against GB News, and they do not close these things down.
So what you're saying is it doesn't undermine their commercial success.
Absolutely not.
So that's my question about GB News. We should review that in a month or in 2 months or in 3 months.
It's actually, is it not similar to, a movie comes out, the critics pan it, but the public love it, and they keep going to see the movie and it makes a ton of money. This is similar to that, it seems to me.
But the attention generation model for GB News is very specific, is very sort of anti-woke, right wing. So that's the one I find really interesting, and I want to see how that plays out in the next 3 months. Is the UK government, and England may well have won the Euros by the time this
or indeed they may have lost.
Or indeed they have lost, and you get the whole appropriation of the Three Lions shirt worn by the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary and all of that, ignoring the fact that most players are from migrant families, and if she had her way, the parents would have ended up on some camp, on a some migrant camp on a defunct oil rig somewhere. Ignoring all of that, the UK government is really good at currently owning and invading the place to the right. So GB News has a challenge in getting enough attention, and perhaps they need to push further to the right, and then I'm just curious. I'm just curious to see how that plays out.
We check in then the next episode.
Yeah, we should.
We should all watch some of it.
Well, you're right, Sam. I'm going to have to watch 5 minutes more. Yeah,
I do need to leave you guys with, and it's in the same context. Yeah. This I love this One Britain, One Nation story. This new song that was where the Education Secretary suggested that all the school children in the UK should sing it on Liberation Day or whatever it was called. Yeah. So I give you once, and this is the greatest piece for me of patriotic lyrics since Tomorrow Belongs to Me from Cabaret in 1972. And I give you the 2 opening stanzas, and it is truly beautiful. So one goes: the sun on the meadow is summery warm, the stag in the forest runs free, but gather together to greet the storm, tomorrow belongs to me. So that's Tomorrow Belongs to Me. And then on the other hand, we have Our nation survived through many storms and many wars. We've opened our doors and widened our island's shores. We celebrate our differences with love in our hearts, united forever, never apart. So yeah, the former is somewhat more menacing, and open doors and widened shores are great. Apart from when you do find yourself in an offshore migrant camp on a defunct oil rig. But hey, that's teething problems of a great free nation.
The scansion of Gavin Williamson. I mean, any English teacher is going to mark him down very hard for. There's no natural prosody. I actually hadn't heard that before, so it's a spontaneous reaction. But the poetry, I think certainly fails there. One thing that I think is very interesting. I share a house with somebody who's currently going through the education system. When I thought I was politically aware, but when I was 17, 18, I did not know who the education secretary was. My son and his friends are very well aware of what a clown Williamson is, and how badly he has handled the course of the last 18 months, and particularly in the peak of the second wave in the first 3 months of this year, and how poorly things played out. And they don't blame their local institution. They blame by name the clown who runs the education department. And I think that might come back to bite this education secretary in this government, because these people will be voting in the next election.
You're right. Good.
This feels like an opportune moment to wrap up this politically highly neutral episode of the Small Data Forum.
Let's get prepped for Sunday, I think is the
oh God, Sunday. Yeah. Oh my God. It's such a weird out-of-body experience for me to sort of have to support England by default. It doesn't feel right, but I do.
Es kommt nach Hause, Thomas. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, okay. Anyway.
Vieni alla casa.
Bring on 2024.
Yeah, we'll be there.
If you like what you hear and read from us, let us know. As always, rate us, review us, critique us, get involved, engage, connect, tell us and others what you think about us. Add to our dozens and dozens of followers and listeners. Follow us on Twitter at SDF Podcast. Visit our website at www.smalldataforum.com, where you can find all the previous podcasts with extended show notes and links. There are also Neville's and Sam's sites, www.nevillehobson.com, with more about Noom and the personal journey of our slimmed down Adonis, and www.insideagents.co.uk with more on Sam's awards. Okay, I really have to stop there. Thanks for listening. Stay healthy, think critically, get vaccinated, wear a mask at your own discretion. Congratulations to England or Italy or both, provided it was a good game, which I hope for. We'll be back in a month or so with more informed opinion or opinionated information. Bye for now.
Okay, stop. So I thought that was a great discussion. Some nice banter there. Didn't touch on hardly any of our topics, but that's fine. You covered the important ones.